Okay. Good evening.
Good evening.
And good evening to everyone on the internet as well. The chapter we're on is called The Altar of God. And the last time we were discussing this chapter, we discussed the tendency when one has attempted to function independent of the Father, to become preoccupied with the beauty of the temple that the altar is in. And that in so doing, one causes the altar to recede in one's mind until it becomes forgotten. But there is another thing you all do with the temple that isn't so beautiful. And that is that because you have your back turned to the altar, and because you are experiencing separateness, aloneness, which isn't natural to you to be feeling, the unnaturalness that you feel, you identify as fear. And then, out of fear, you transform the temple into a fortress, a defense against whatever's out there that is responsible for your being afraid, you see. And if you find the fortress not protecting you well, you strengthen it, you develop it, you find a bigger and better way to be safe. And all the time, your back is turned to the altar. Now, you must understand that the altar is the presence of God. That is the very presence of you. And there is an effulgence to it, an illumination to it, a glow, if you will. And the glow is what you might call the temple that surrounds the illumination of the presence of God. That is the actual center and circumference of you. When you imagine that you can step back from the light that is you and observe it, you find that you can also imagine a capacity to turn your back on it and notice the glow without seeing the altar, without seeing the source of the glow. And then you can become preoccupied with it because it is the only thing in your view. And so you can beautify it, or you can strengthen it, or you can Do whatever your imagination can come up with, except that because your back is turned on your essential being, and you cannot avoid but feel the unnaturalness of that stance, everything you do, whether it's beautifying the temple or creating a fortress out of it, will be done out of fear and as a defense. Now, your body is the visibility and tangibility of your individuality. Your individuality is spirit, not matter, not solid form. Therefore, the visibility and tangibility of you has to also be utter spirit, not tangible matter. But the moment you begin to use the temple as a means of defense, you densify it, as I've said before. You tighten it up. Indeed, I know that almost all of you at this particular time, with all of the invitations you have through the media to feel fear, are experiencing physical tension, are experiencing queasiness in the pit of your stomach, are generally not feeling at ease in your body. And the reason is because you are preparing it to defend yourself. Now, I'm going to ask you a trick question. Which came first? The invitation to fear or the physical sensation of fear? I'm not going to have you answer that question. Some of you are likely to say, I was feeling uneasy before I got any indication from my world that there was a need for it. And others of you will say, I wasn't feeling anything until I started watching the news. Well, what came first wasn't the call for fear or the uneasy feeling within you. What came first was turning your back on the altar. If this is clear to you, then you will be able to understand easily and clearly that the answer to the call for fear and the physical sensation of uneasiness is to give your attention back to the altar. So that you don't engage in defense beautifully or by having a strong fortress. Oh, let's defend ourselves through reason and compassion. Let's defend ourselves through prayer. Let's defend ourselves through a positive attitude. Let's defend ourselves by consciously embracing our enemy with love. You see, that's a beautiful way of defending yourself, but it's still defense. You've got to stop keeping your back to the altar. You've got to abandon looking at effects and turn within to the place where your peace is available to you. And you must choose for your peace first before you look out there. So that when you access your peace, you may feel the presence of God's love that is there, growing brighter and illuminating you with the gift of love. So that all you are impelled to do or be is the uncomplicated presence of love that sees what God would have you see, where you had seen an enemy that you needed to defend yourself against. And that is the only thing that is going to transform whatever situation you're confronted by that seems to be a justifiable call for fear. Now, I want you to understand also that as long as you engage in the habit of using your body as a shield, as a fortress, as a presence of that which has the capacity to exert force, you will find yourself experiencing your body trying to accommodate your intent to use it as a defense. And you will be uncomfortable, you will become ill, you will find diseases. Simply because your decision to act and be a forceful presence for your defense causes you to use the glow of the altar as a means of being unconscious of the altar. And your ever-present sanity with a capital S does not allow you to become more powerful as an independent agent for change without your experiencing an equal amount of distress. Your sanity, the ever-present balance of being, causes every single one of you, when you are attempting to act at odds with being, to be met with and equal force in the opposite direction, you might say. In other words, if you try to stretch into a position or a shape that God didn't give you the ability to move into, your attempt will be met with an awareness that you can't do it, and it will also be met with an awareness of the unnaturalness of it. Because even though you try to act and think insanely, you haven't been given the capacity to do it. And so you say, I am going to protect myself against my enemy. And I am going to use my body, because it's the only thing I have to use, as the fortress and the weapon. And I am going to do whatever I have to do to protect myself, no matter how aggressive my enemy gets. And the more intense you become, the more at odds with the nature of the temple, of the glow of the altar, you become. And you squeeze the life, you squeeze the glow, you squeeze the light out of it. Not that you can actually do that, but you squeeze it out of your range of vision. And ultimately you may find that your so-called enemy has killed you when actually you have turned the light out by insisting on attempting to solve the problem that you have misperceived as existing by getting rid of it and using the glow of your being as the means of doing it. And the only result you can seem to have is to find yourself snuffed out. So when you attack your enemy, you're attacking yourself, because the whole scenario has arisen out of a fantastic imagination that you could actually turn your back on the light of your being, the altar that is in the very center of you, and engage in anything, beautiful or ugly, loving or hateful, healing or killing, without being connected with your source. And so the enemy you see, because you have your back to the altar, seems to kill you, because that is the scenario you have set in place by becoming defended against this imaginary entity. Now, it doesn't have to be Saddam Hussein. It can be your child, it can be your lover, it can be your mate. It can be an employer or an employee. You're getting constant invitations to feel vulnerable these days. And it's very easy for whatever vulnerability you activate within yourself to rub off or color your experience of everyone else. And anyone and everyone can become the object of your suspicion. And very creative, imaginative ideas about just how they are being terrible and operating to your detriment. So this is really a time to remember what your function is, which is to be the presence of love. And to remember that the atonement principle, because atonement is what this is all about, the atonement principle is love, and the atonement is an act of love. And as long as your attention is on the temple, put it this way, as long as your attention is on the glow from the altar, and whether you make it into a temple or a fortress, you're ultimately going to have to realize that the answer to any form of defense is to turn around so that your back isn't to the altar, and so that you can see the altar, and in your imagined distance from it, feel yourself being loved by the love that is really you, that is really God being the presence that is you. So that your decision to stand apart from it and observe it might melt in the presence of that love. And you will find yourself slipping back into being it rather than standing apart from it and observing it, and apparently giving yourself a vantage point where you can turn your back on it and look out there and see a world that you must be defended against. Maybe it isn't another country. Maybe it isn't a mate or a child or a parent or an employer or an employee. Maybe it's your body that you are finding yourself needing to defend yourself against because it is not behaving properly and threatening your life. You see, maybe it is what is causing you to be vulnerable to the worst. You see, even the glow from the altar that you look at, which is really the temple, but which you look at with your back turned to the altar, can become that which you have to defend yourself against. And so, here you are, using your body as a defense against it, further compounding the densifying of pure light, pure glow, the pure energy of spirit that never was matter and never was governed by the laws of matter, the laws of physics. So, with that in mind, let's begin. Again, it's the second paragraph on page 21 for those who are in the second edition. And for those who are in the first edition, it's page 18, the second paragraph. Okay.
For perfect effectiveness, the atonement belongs at the center of the inner altar, where it undoes the separation and restores the wholeness of the mind.
Now, it is already there. For perfect effectiveness, it is already there. The point is that that's where you need to bring your attention. Your attention needs to be brought to the center of your being, the inner quietness. Continue.
Before the separation, the mind was invulnerable to fear, because fear did not exist.
And after the separation, the mind is invulnerable to fear, because fear does not exist. So, it's not like the separation happened a long time ago and now you're stuck in it. All you have to do is be willing to not be separate anymore. And the moment you make that joining with the presence of God in the middle of you, then you will find you're invulnerable and that there is no fear and that there never was. So again, it's not something that happened in the past. It's a change of mind that occurred, which can be unchanged at any moment. Continue.
Both the separation and the fear are miscreations that must be undone for the restoration of the temple and for the opening of the altar to receive the atonement. This heals the separation by placing within you the one effective defense against all separation thoughts and making you perfectly invulnerable. This heals the separation by placing within you the one effective defense against all separation thoughts and making you perfectly invulnerable.
The one effective defense against all separation thoughts is to abandon your imagined capacity to stand separate and objectively view the subjective experience of being love itself. The only effective defense against an illusion is to stop indulging in the illusion. And because you can't actually become something you're not, you never did become something that had that capacity. And so that fact that you have never changed one iota for 1 second from what God created you to be is the answer that's already in place in the middle of you because it was never undone. Okay.
I have a question about when you were talking about turning our backs to the altar. Every time we do that, is that always an attack on the body?
It's always an attack on God, you might say. It's always an attack on your essential being. And because you are using your body in order to
Wake up.
because you're using your body as the means of attacking God, you are causing it to try to do something that it cannot actually do.